Today, Superhuman, I have a sensational superhuman coming to us from Kansas City. His name is Joey Kramer, and he is just going to unleash his superhuman story with us today. I'm not going to do the usual intro spiel. This guy we met during Date with Destiny, and it to say that we got along like a house on fire is an understatement. So I really just want to bring you straight on, Joey. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ria. I didn't remember that we had actually met at Date with Destiny. And now that we discussed it, it's like, I absolutely remember you because you and I stood out in the group we were in. So yeah, I'm so happy. I'm so honored, privileged, blessed to be on your show, to be able to speak to your audience, share my story, my journey. And, if it resonates with anybody, I can't wait to, tell it. So.
Yeah, exactly. I think that that's probably the best place to start, is letting us in on your humble roots and where everything began, because a big proponent of what you speak about is how you've been able to rewrite your DNA, to create the script, designing your destiny, to being the I love speaking about that too, is being the author of our story. We write the chapters, and so take us to how this came to be a realization for you.
Yes, absolutely. I'd love to. Just the foundation from the very beginning of it all, though, is you're absolutely correct. We're writing this story of our life every second of every day. It's all coming from our mind. It's all coming from our imagination, from the memories, the emotions. There's so many components to it. But the fact is, we're all unique, and we all are writing our own unique story. For me, I went back and literally traveled back through time, rewrote a specific story of my past, and brought it back with me into my reality, into the present day, where I literally rewrote my biological DNA, changed everything I'd ever known and believed about my life. And it all happened over the course of a few days time period. But, when I tell people you can rewrite your past, keep in mind everybody's past, everybody's idea of rewriting their past, and everybody's story is so unique. I thought about it a while back, and it's like, well, my version of rewriting my past would have to obviously be like, go big or go home, because I don't do anything small. It's like, not intentionally, that's just who I am. So it's the idea of course, I went back in time and rewrote my DNA, because that's like the most outrageous, unbelievable thing I could think of. And that's what I chose for my reality. So when I say you can go back, rewrite your past, change your future, you absolutely can, in whatever way that works for you, whatever way you've got to conceptualize rewriting of your past. It's our universe to create. We just have to believe in the fact that we can create it any which way we want to. So with that being said, let me I'll start from the beginning. I was born just like everybody else. And at birth, I was abandoned by my biological father. Went through life pretty normal. I didn't have a father until about 8 years of age. My mom remarried to my stepdad and had what I perceived as a normal childhood. Other than the fact that I was sexually abused as a young child, and that led to alcohol, drugs, sexual addictions, every kind of addiction, basically. I was a mess, didn't know what I was doing, where I was going, but it felt normal. Life seemed normal. Everybody had problems. Then as teenage years set in, I developed Tourette syndrome. So if your audience notices I blink a little more often than normal, or twitch, that's what that is. So I've dealt my entire life with that. Leading up into my 20s, I attempted suicide a couple different times, from 20s to 30s. Like I said, I was a mess. Everything had piled up on me, and it all stemmed back to that feeling of abandonment that I had at birth, right? So it wasn't until about, I guess, 2014, I started to put the pieces back together and really started to, after my divorce that I went through, which was horrific and took 2 years, and long story there, but it was for the best, right?
Mhm.
So I tried to get my life back together in 2014, and that's when I started working, finding self-help, self-development. I started to question a lot of things and started changing, you know, and before I knew it, I think by 2018, I'm deep into personal development. I'm reading 50, 80 books a year, going to Grant Cardone, starting Tony Robbins type seminars, and leads up to, I guess, it really gets good, I guess, in 2020, right before the pandemic, right before everything hits. I'd been, prior to that, about a year before that, I'd really started meditating. I'd really started trying to go within. I had just read Dr. Dispenza's book, Becoming Superhuman, and, had done a lot of reading at that point. So I'm getting pretty comfortable, confident in this whole spiritual life, law of attraction, all these things you learn about, right? And in the end of February, I go out. It's a beautiful day here in Kansas. Normally it's snowing at that time of year. It's a beautiful day. I go out for a jog first thing in the morning with my dog. I misstep and I blow my knee out. And I can't walk on it. And keep in mind, I'm a door-to-door salesman at that point in time. So I just blew my knee out. Can't provide a living for my family at this moment. My wife, she's in New York City for her birthday. It was her 40th birthday. So she's in New York City with her mom. And we've got $200 to $300 left in our bank account. We've got thousands due the next week in bills. Freaking out, just blow my knee out. I'm thinking, holy shit, what am I going to do? Like, we are screwed. And it was that moment that I kind of just got so angry. And I start yelling at God, like, why? What does this have to do with my purpose? I'm doing everything right. I mean, I got so mad. I just couldn't see why this was all happening the way it was happening. And I calmed down. I went into a meditation. And that during that meditation, I saw my first vision. I had my first real talk with God, I guess you would say, or spirit. And I was shown what was to come. I was shown like the near future, 6 months down the road, a year down the road, and how everything was going to be just fine. The company my wife started when the pandemic hit, it didn't even exist when I envisioned it in my mind and I saw it play itself out. And that's a whole nother story in and of itself, but that went on to be go viral as a top Mother's Day gift in 2020 from the vision I had, and it turned into this amazing company that she runs now. So fast forward the rest of that year, I'm learning how to manifest. I'm learning how to create things in my reality because I was shown this vision. I was told not to worry. Like, there was no fear. There was nothing I was afraid of at that point because I saw kind of the end. And it was so comforting. It was so peaceful in knowing that I didn't have to be afraid of paying the bills. Keep in mind, the money kept coming in, right?
Yep.
So it's like in unbelievable ways, we pay this bill, we pay that bill. Before you know it, it's like we didn't have a problem worrying about money anymore. It's like, oh my God, this is amazing. So building and building and building all the way to December, where we met. We enter this Date with Destiny event with Tony Robbins. And at that point, I was pretty far along in my spiritual personal development. By this time, I'd read over like 300 some books in the last like year and a half and everything I'd been experiencing. So we go into this event and I knew within me there was still one thing I had to remove. And it was this anger that I had deep down inside of me that I'd forgotten all about. And after the first day of the event, I realized that the anger that I had my whole life that had been sabotaging me was this abandonment of my father at birth. So I woke up the second day determined to write him a letter. I go to write him a letter and I get one, and I haven't talked to him in 40 years, keep in mind. So I'm going to write him a letter and forgive him for believing that he was the cause of my problems, right?
Mm.
So I go to write the letter. I got one sentence in and I lost it. Just I cried for an hour straight and just thought about how stupid I'd been, to let this event shape me. He had nothing to do with my life. He was just a moment in my life, right?
Mm.
So I'm kind of coming to grips with that. And after about an hour, I take a breath and I'm fine, and everything, it all goes away. And I look down at the letter and I'm like, I don't even need to write this anymore. I feel great. I forgive him. Oh, well, life's good.
Yeah.
So then we go further in. So that was huge to begin with. Then we go further into the event and we do this past life, like early life, childhood regression meditation. And that's where the magic actually happened. Was I went back and I remembered an event when I was 5 that I'd forgotten all about. And it was my mom and I were going down to Texas to meet my biological father, who I hadn't seen in 5 years, right? And we're told to put ourselves in the mind, in our child mind, right? What were we thinking? What were we feeling? What were we seeing? And I could see me, so excited going to meet my dad. I'm like, this is awesome. And then I realized, I started thinking, holy shit, this is really a lot of pressure. What if he doesn't like me? What if I screw up? What if I'm not the son he wanted me to be and he won't come home with us? So then I put all this pressure on me as a 5-year-old child, which is completely ridiculous, right? But that's what I remembered when I went back, traveled back in time, and I was there, and that's what I was seeing and feeling. So then I put myself in my mom's eyes. Same thing, she was terrified. This man had hurt her, had abandoned her. She didn't want anything necessarily to do with him. But at the same time, she wanted to give me a father. So she's there trying to mend bridges, she explained to me, she's like, I don't even know why the hell I was there. After we spoke about it later, she's like, I don't even know what I thought I was going to accomplish. But for me, when I was there in that moment, I could sense her fear. I could sense her sadness and anxiety from it, right? Then I went into his mind, and same thing. He was terrified. He ran away to Texas because he didn't want to be a father. He didn't want to have the responsibilities, and he wanted to just be an alcoholic, womanizing, whatever he wanted to do. He wanted to be selfish. And I saw him for who he was and why he did what he did. And I wasn't angry anymore, but I saw the fear he had, oh my God, I don't want to be trapped in this family. This isn't what I want. And it all just became so clear to me in that moment. I saw from their eyes, I felt what they were feeling, the compassion I had for them and their story, and what they were thinking at that moment was completely different than what I was thinking at that moment, but it still had the impact it did on me, right? For 40 years, it subconsciously was in there, just spinning around, screwing things up, So after that meditation was over, it was like I had a new sense of forgiveness that I didn't know existed. I had a new sense of compassion that I didn't know existed. I had a new sense of love that was just felt so amazing. I'm on cloud 9 at this point. You could not have done anything to me to have brought me down. I'm like, this is amazing. Life is awesome. The event ends. Riding high, right? It takes me a couple days. I got to call my mom and tell her what happened, which was hard. I was scared. I didn't want to. I don't know why, but it took me a couple days. I finally pick up the phone and I call her, and I get to talking to her, and I'm telling her how much I loved her and how I forgave her for anything she thought she may have done wrong, in raising me. I said, I'm here now because of you and because of everything you did. Everything was exactly the way it had to be. She's like, oh, I wish I would have maybe been harder on you. I'm like, are you kidding me? I tried to kill myself multiple times. If you would have been harder on me, I would have broke. I'm like, you did exactly what you needed to do for me to get me to this point. And at this point, I'm untouchable. I'm good with everything. I love you. I forgive you. I love Robert. I forgive him, my biological father.
Yeah.
And I explained how I went back and forgave him for everything. And it wasn't his fault. And that's when she said, Joey, I've got something I need to tell you. I said, okay, what's up, Mom? She goes, I've been keeping a secret from you for 40 years. What? Go on. At this point, I'm on cloud 9. So you can't dampen me, like I said. I'm like, go on. What's going on? And she goes, Joey, Robert, he's not your father. Like, what? Did I hear you right? Did you just say he's not my father? You mean the guy I just spent this whole past week removing from my life, like forgiving him, understanding that he wasn't the cause of any of this. You're telling me I did all this work on this guy that I thought was my father, only to find out now he's not my father. Wow. She said, yes. Right? Yeah. Mind's blown at this point. So now I'm just like, well, who is my father? I've got to know. So she's crying at this point, just in tears, says, only him, her, and my uncle who passed away the year before. They were the only three. Oh, and my stepdad. Those are the only 4 people in the world that knew this secret, right? So imagine that kind of stress that they were all under, having to keep up this facade, this bullshit story. So she says, I went to nearly every extreme to have a baby. Robert, he couldn't have one. He was infertile. So she went all over. She even said she went as far as contacting the Colombian embassy to see about adopting an orphan child. And I'm like, is that why I get so tan in the summertime? And I'm the only person in my entire family with blue eyes. I'm like, I'm the son of a Colombian drug lord. She's like, no, honey, you're not a Colombian. I'm like, okay, well, that burst my bubble. That sounded cool, So at that point, she goes on to tell me, no, what actually happened was in 1978, they were doing an experimental procedure at the hospital she worked at, and that was known as in vitro fertilization. And come to find out that the donor for me was a medical student at the hospital who ended up becoming a doctor at the hospital later on. So in an instant, my life changed from being the alcoholic, the son of an alcoholic, womanizing, abandoning man, to the son of a doctor, literally with the biological genes of a doctor within me, which now my 2 children are grandsons of doctors, of a doctor. So it was like instantaneously, my whole reality shifted, my whole paradigm of who I was entering the week and doing Tony Robbins. By the time Friday comes around, my entire life has completely changed. And it was just the most unbelievable moment, of my life. And not to mention, I got to release my mom as well from 40 years, and my stepdad for that matter. I got to release them from these 40 years of lies that they've been having to deal with. And I set them all free. It was almost, I set myself free. It was, the truth will set you free.
Yeah.
By forgiving myself, forgiving everybody, for healing, finding the compassion, and understanding that it all happened the way it had to happen. It gave me a superhuman power to literally rewrite my own version, my own story, any which way I wanted it to be. And like I said earlier, obviously with me, I go bigger, I go home. So why not rewrite it in the most unbelievable way possible? I'm just going to change my DNA. Screw it, So it was an amazing moment of my life. And it's now led me to where I'm at now. And this is what I do, is I get to share my story. I get to share my journey, and I get to hopefully inspire people around the world to the fact that your story doesn't define you. We can go back, we can heal, we can rewrite the wrongs, the traumas, the things we think are unhealable, the things that we think were so terrible that they had to happen to us. Woe is me. It's all bullshit. It's all a story we tell ourselves, and it's all an excuse. The only thing that's real is what's happening between your two temples right here, and that's whatever you want to imagine it to be is the reality we can live in. So.
Wow, Joey. I mean, thank you so much for sharing such an in-depth perspective into your past and your journey is incredible. It's funny that you speak about that particular exercise, that meditation that we did during Date with Destiny, because I had a very similar enlightening moment. And so to explain how it works to everyone else is that the story that Joe is explaining, it's looking at it from all three, is a 3D perspective. You're looking at it from your perspective at that young age, his mom's perspective, and who he thought was his biological father at that time. And seeing it from all three perspectives, and even bird's eye, it's looking down on the whole scenario like a movie. And it's a really powerful meditation and a way of, like you say, in your words, rewriting your past, because how we viewed it at that time, that particular scenario is like, oh, that happened to me, like, oh, this and that, like, you're still viewing it as that 5-year-old self you were. But then it's like, well, actually, now I've seen it through my mom's eyes and who I thought was my father's eyes. And it changes the game hugely.
Yes, it's something I say often, on my shows and when I work with clients, is everybody, there is only you, there is only me. While we're all individual entities of energy, right? At the end of the day, there's only me and my story and the way I choose to write my story. Everybody's a participating actor or a extra in my play, and it goes the same for you. And the same for each individual soul. Exactly. Is their own person, their own story, their own universe, their own, you write this however you want to. It's not being selfish. It's being aware of who and what we are and taking responsibility to consciously create our universe, to consciously create our reality, instead of allowing our reality to be created by the programming, by the subliminal and subconscious world around us. It's all in our subconscious mind. And if we can understand that, get out of its way and start taking control of what we think and control of our imagination, the world will change before our very eyes.
Exactly. And that's a big thing that Tony talks about as well, is that, everything is happening for you, not to you. And, when you've gone through the trials and tribulations that you've gone through, it puts you into a bit of a victim mindset, a victim, why me? It's like when you're back against that wall in that moment where you were like looking to the heavens as, why is this happening to me? What have I done to deserve this? And it really is like, it's trying to show you a lesson to be learned and opening you up. And a big factor of what's opened you up to all of your truths is being so open to receive them. And so when we received all of these enlightening moments and truths and different perspectives on what had happened to us in our past, it really opened not only ourselves up, but our entire families and all those that we care about, because we come out of an event like that and we have the hard conversations, because I also had the conversations with my parents and, with the things that came up for me, and, tears are shared and it's in beautiful things. And like those 3 words that I could see as you were even explaining the whole conversation is like a trifecta triangle, it's like compassion, forgiveness, and love. It's like having the compassion to understand other people's view and perspective, and then having the forgiveness to forgive them, to let that burden go. Your mom and those people had to hold that secret for 40 plus years, and you were unaware. So that probably was even a blessing for you in some way, right? You didn't know that.
I couldn't have taken probably that news years ago. I was too fragile. I was too unstable with my own being, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's taken a lot of work to come to grips, even to start wanting to travel down that path of healing. And I think that's a lot of the hesitation people have, is they're afraid. We're all afraid of change because it's uncomfortable. But when people talk about the healing journey and the dark night of the soul, and it's hard, yeah, it is. But at the end of the day, it is the most fulfilling and most rewarding thing you will ever do. And when you look back on it, having gone through it, it's like, that was easy. I would do that over and over and over again to get here. If I knew then what I know now, I would have done this 20 years ago, because it wasn't scary and it wasn't hard looking back on it. It's kind of like giving birth for women. I've heard it said, like the second when you're having a baby, it's like, oh my God, pain, this is horrible. I'm never getting pregnant again, you son of a bitch. And then the second the baby's out and all those hormones come, it's like, oh, I love my baby. I want more babies. And it's that back and forth. Our mind tricks us into, we don't want to do it. We do want to do it. Don't allow our minds to trick us in thinking this isn't what we want to do. All of us, our minds all want to heal. We all want to go back and right the wrongs, fix the pain. The ego gets in the way. The ego is so powerful. It's like, no, I got to protect you. And really, it doesn't know what the hell it's doing. It's acting out of fear instead of acting out of logic. It's like, no, I'm going to go back. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to heal from this. You're going to be happy once it's over with. You shut up. You stay over there. I'm going to go do me now.
Yeah.
So it's a never-ending battle until you get awareness of it, until you understand what the ego is trying to do to you. Then it's much easier to be like, nope, shut up. You're not getting into this argument. This is between me and me.
Well, putting ego in its place, at the same time, it is trying to protect us in some ways, because that fear of confrontation, it's fear of the unknown and what's to come out of that. I mean, whether it's a confrontation with yourself or with someone else, it's scary. So people avoid it like a plague. But it's like, at the same time, having that courage, there's a reason why there's a lot of emphasis on breakthroughs, because once you have that courage to even just take that step towards breaking through your own shit, because there's no other way really of putting it, that's where enlightenment and strength and power is formed, because now you are the owner of your story. And it is so valuable to get to the other side, because there's a peace to be upheld. There's a peace to acquire that is just, I don't know, it just makes you feel whole. And
it does. And it's the peace, I think, that you're describing is it's a removal of fear. When you heal and you understand, you can start to look back and see why everything happened the way it had to happen. It allows you to understand that everything's happening the way it has to happen. You can remove that anxiety. You can remove that what if. That's the thing that holds so many people back, is what if. What if doesn't exist. What if is our imagination playing games with our ego, saying, I need to protect you. When we get to a certain level, a certain point in our evolution, the ego can be turned off, because it was only installed there because we come back forgetting everything, and we have to go back through this whole life again and again and again to learn these lessons. So the ego's like the autopilot that's there to protect us, because we forget everything from birth on. And it's only until we remember who and what we are can we turn that autopilot off. It's going to keep triggering. It's going to keep activating that self-protection mechanism over and over and over again until we get the awareness of what's actually happening. And once we start to no longer fear anything, including death, because that's just another transition, there's nothing to be afraid of. There's nothing to worry about. The media, all the propaganda, everything in the world is designed to either instill fear in us, to sway us one way or to sway us the other way. I choose now to only allow in what I want to have in. I don't allow the negative thoughts, the negative ideas. Are they there? Do I see them? Do I watch them? I do. Do I accept them? Do I let them have any power over me? No. And that is a form of mastery that we can all get to. And I'm not perfect at it. Don't get me wrong. I lose my shit still more often than I should. I let my wife trigger me because she's really freaking good at it. But it's just telling me that I still have a lesson that I need to learn about why she triggers me or why I get angry about this or that. Have I removed 90% of it all? Absolutely. If I still got a ways to go, yeah, we'll never get, if we got to the end, then what's the point of it all? It's always going to be trying to get a little bit better and a little bit better each day. So if I can remove that little bit of trigger, just a tiny bit every day, at some point, it'll no longer trigger me, and then I'll have a new lesson to learn. Something else will manifest. I will create something that needs to be considered an obstacle. That's how life works. Just one after another. Grow, build, evolve.
Yeah. And I think it's important to reiterate that, fear is not something that you can just pack away and it'll cease to exist. Because I think people focus too much on if I think positively and I keep my head in a positive space and then I think about this and I don't have any fear and I just be strong and just keep going. And it's like, okay, you're also being unrealistic, and that's a different type of ego. And it's not being accepting of the fact that fear is going to exist. It's just your awareness that it will. And it does. And same thing as when you speak about triggers, because some people may not understand what that means. It's like when things happen in life that trigger you, it's reflecting something back to you that you need to deal with. And so, you might be stuck in traffic and get really angry at the guy that just cut you off. And you're furious. Yeah, how dare he cut me off? Who does he think he is? Does he think he's better than me? Does he think that he deserves to be in front of me? How dare he honk, honk, beep horn, flash him, do whatever you need to do. And it's like, well, if you stop for a second, take a breath and think about why is it that situation is actually, in quote, triggering you to have such an intense reaction. And it could be something totally different. It could be, something that happened to you in your childhood where, Jimmy used to think that he was better than you and he'd always one up you and you always felt like you were always just one step behind. And, that's just it. These little things that happen in life, they're trying to teach us lessons to go through. And it's like,
absolutely,
it's like, Ria, this is the lesson you need to learn. I'm showing you. Yeah. Are you
and
getting
if you don't
it?
learn it, you're going to keep repeating it.
Yes.
And it might escalate to a bigger problem, but it's going to persist until you address it. Yes. I do with one of the classes I teach to kind of emphasize, show what you're talking about. Everything in our world, a trigger is everything externally, right? And for instance, if I showed a picture to 100 people of a dozen white roses and just had you look at those roses for 1 minute and just think about what those roses mean to you, half of the people in there would think the roses mean love, and they'll think back to a memory where they got white roses or they gave white roses. They saw white roses in a store or in a movie. But then you're going to have maybe 5, 10 people out of those 100 who start crying because those white roses were what they remembered being on their mother's grave or their grandfather's, their grandmother's coffin, or they were given a white rose when something traumatic happened to them. So the triggers we take in are going to be different, have different meanings for each and every person. And what they're really doing, like you said, they're triggering an emotional response that's within our brains, that's within our subconscious, most likely from childhood, but we're developing these all the time, every day. So these emotional triggers, they create these memories. And those memories, whenever you start to think about the memories, they create and fire up the they fire up the emotions, which then fire up the endorphins. The neural pathways in your brain start firing, and you're either getting serotonin or one of the many types of biochemical drugs, right? And they're causing you to get agitated or anxious or sweat or angry or happy or laugh, whatever, but those triggers are causing the emotions, which are causing everything to play itself out. So yes, understanding what's happening on a scientific level allows us to then be aware of it and start to control how we allow it to affect us. It takes mind control, but you don't have to be perfect at this. You just have to recognize when it's happening. These are baby steps, just the sheer recognition of it. You can blow up and have your temper tantrum, but if you first, right in the middle of it or right at the beginning, at least recognize, oh, I'm having a temper tantrum, that little spark of recognition is the start. Go ahead and yell and throw shit around after that, but it only takes a spark to then ignite that neural pathway. And once you do it once, you do it again, you do it again, you do it again, until it creates a rut. Like if you're driving down the same dirt road and that tire's going in the dirt over and over again, it's causing that rut. That's your neural pathway forming over and over. So if you've driven down that road 1,000 times, you've got a big, deep rut that is hard for the tire to get out of. It just follows that path. Yeah. So that's why it's so hard for us to rewrite these neural pathways, these emotional connections, because we've dug such deep ruts that we have to literally jump out of those ruts. And it takes work, it takes effort, it takes some emotional pain to go through it, to get through to the other side, to create a new rut, I guess.
Well, exactly. I mean, we are creatures of habit, and in science says we do have 70 to 80% of the same thoughts as we did yesterday. So it really does take a conscious effort to even just use different words the next day. Honestly, it's almost laughable when you think about it. Like it really is when you start being self-aware of these things and conscious of it, which I guess brings me to what you're doing now, which I love. The name of it. It's My Reality Practice. So tell us a bit about that.
Yes. I started that back in last fall, I think August. My Reality Practice, myrealitypractice.com. You can find me on YouTube under Reality Practice channel, on Facebook, My Reality Practice, so on and so forth. What I'm doing is going to be a little bit different moving forward, but I'm rebranding everything, and I'll tell you all about it. But what I'm doing right now is I do weekly interviews. I have 3 to 4 different shows that come out each week on a variety of topics that relate to how we create our reality and how we use our imagination, how we use quantum physics, how we use spirituality. And I have a bunch of different shows that kind of explain different points of view, and then bring on guests that talk about their own transformation, their own quantum leaps, their own getting out of the matrix, in a sense. So I share that knowledge with the world. But what I'm so excited about is what's coming at the beginning of April. I'm launching what's called the Reality Practice Network. And what that's going to be, I like to call it Gaia meets Beachbody on Demand. So
Love it.
What that means is Gaia, if you're familiar with the network, has so many great shows, so many great documentaries, lessons to learn. But then what? You watch this show and it's like, that was great. How do I put it into action? How do I actually implement it in my life?
Yep.
Well, that's where Reality Practice Network's going to come into play. I've already got 12 personalities, guides on board, and we're finalizing details now with a couple networks. Actually, Amazon Fire, Roku, things like that, platforms like that. And we're going to be putting out this network where everybody on the network will have their own exclusive shows, teaching their own specific versions of how they create their reality. We'll have shows that are dedicated just to the divine feminine, or the divine masculine, and then spirituality and entering the quantum, health and wellness. We're going to have a lady on there, Carrie, who teaches financial spirituality. And it's just going to be a very, very eclectic group and mixture of personalities that are going to help people find what resonates with them. I may not resonate with everybody on how I teach this, but I guarantee somebody on the network will resonate with you and you'll want to learn more. So once you start watching their weekly videos, you're going to have the opportunity to get free resources, free training, from them. In addition, they'll offer their packages. Most of the guides will have their own, courses and whatnot. And then if you want to, you can actually hire them one-on-one and work with them in a more intimate capacity. In addition to all of that, we'll start doing this fall actual conferences and retreats. So once we build the network and launch it, we've already got, for instance, our first 12 speakers for a 2 to 3 day conference, wherever we decide to host it at. And you'll come to that and hear all 12 speakers presenting their own versions of how we create this wonderful reality of life. So we'll have retreats with it as well, all sorts of things, all with the idea that we're going to continue to build the network. We're going to keep bringing on more and more talent, more and more personalities, and really just create a home for this great awakening. The great ascension is what I like to call it, but it'll be a common place for all of us to share what we've learned on this journey and to help inspire more and more people to eventually, our goals eventually to inspire 1 billion people through the network. So
beautiful. That's amazing. And yes, like that does sound like an incredible, I don't even know what to even call it. It's not even just it's a world in itself. Let's just call it that. And I think
yes.
that leads me to the question that I ask all of my amazing guests, which is, what does summoning your superhuman mean to you, Joey?
Summoning my superhuman means living my life to its fullest potential, not missing the mark, in everything I do, see the beauty in the chaos, understand that I'm an infinite being of love, of light. I am an infinite piece of God. There's nothing to fear. There's nothing I can't do. This is my reality, my universe to create. And I choose to create beauty. I choose to create love. I choose to create abundance. And that is the reality I am blessed to live each and every day. And that's my version. That's my idea of being superhuman. When I'm living like that, I'm living in my own version of heaven. And I believe we all have that ability to go there. This is a learning process. This is an evolution. This is a new way of thinking. And the world is awakening to this new reality that we've shifted into. And it's a beautiful place. It's a beautiful thing.
And so it is. Thank you. That I couldn't think of a more beautiful place to end today's interview. And I want to again thank you so much for connecting with me and sharing your story and your time and your experiences with me and with us. And I look forward to staying connected with you in the future.
I so much appreciate you. I'm grateful for what you do and your audience. Thank you. And don't hesitate, reach out if you need anything. Let's see how we can get you onto the network moving forward.
I'd like that.
All right.
Thank you so much, Joey. Bye.
Yeah.